The sun is a metronome that never misses a beat. In Busouso, a village that wears the same dust as yesterday, the women begin walking before dawn, tin basins on their heads, babies tied to their backs. Hushed greetings that are more breath than sound. Slow your feet, Gabriella, Alexandra says, palm grazing her daughter's shoulder. Water punishes the impatient. A young Gabriella Dope watches her mother lower a rope into the well that has grown temperamental with age. The bucket thuds against the side. When it returns, the water smells of rust and old rain. They will boil it and hope. On the walk home, Gabriella counts cracked earth like beads. Her mother's jaw is tight. One day, Alexandra tells her, not for the first time, you will make the water come to us. Gabriella laughs then, small astonished the way children laugh at magic. She is 8, and miracles still feel like a kind of homework you can finish if you try hard enough. Years unspool. Drought repeats like a bad joke. The river grows fickle. School grows quiet. The clinic grows full. Gabriella, taller now, walks the same path with her mother, then alone, then with her friend Miriam, whose laughter has thinned with hunger. They come home in a heat that frays tempers, and Gabriella learns to listen the way you learn to braid. One strand hope, one strand worry, the last strand stubbornness. A teacher named Gilberto notices the way she pulls apart problems like threads. He keeps her after class to show her diagrams of wells, charcoal kilns, filtration layers made from sand and stone. The world is a set of sieves, he says, tapping the paper. Put the right ones in the right order and miracles look like math. At night, while the generator coughs to life and sputters back to sleep, Gabriella traces the diagrams until the shapes feel like prayer. University, Gilberto says later, scribbling the word on a slip of paper with a grin that dares her to argue. You'll go. Alexandra doesn't argue either. She smooths the edges of the paper with work-scarred fingers and says, go learn the names of the things that make our lives hard. Then come back and change their names. Nairobi is noise and neon and an ache of distance Gabriella hides from her mother's voice on the phone. At the University of Nairobi, she is swallowed by labs that smell of alcohol and possibility. She learns to hold bacteria in petri dishes like secrets and to build filters the way you build trust, layer by layer with attention. Her favorite bench is near the window. There she tests ceramic cartridges with thin skins of activated charcoal, measures pore size the way a tailor measures sleeves, and weighs outcomes with a ruthlessness that feels like love. A classmate, Kweku, is her foil and friend, part skeptic, part amplifier. You can't fix the whole world with a cartridge, he teases. I'm not trying to fix the whole world, she says, not looking up from the microscope. Just mine. She names bacteria by their shape and watches their numbers vanish by the time water leaves her prototype. 98% gone. A paper writes itself in her head. Towards low-cost household filtration in arid environments. But papers are only proof on paper. Busouso is not a lab. The filters there have to resist sand, neglect, and the casual violence of daily life. She stays late writing a proposal to the Global Water Initiative. She crafts it like a story, problem, setting, protagonist, failure, pivot, hope. She draws supply chains in loops instead of straight lines because nothing goes straight where she comes from. She imagines the reply coming back with exclamation points. Comes with periods. Your technology is too unproven for large-scale deployment. Kweku finds her in the hallway holding the paper like it might bruise. Gabriella, they fund the safe bets. Make them regret it. She rewrites the proposal for the African Development Bank. This rejection is shorter, a shrug and a suit. We are wary of new filtration technologies. She laughs then sharp disbelieving. Wary of water. Wary of trying. She phones home. They said no, she tells her mother. Alexandra's voice is a stone in a river. Steady reshaping the flow. Then we will say yes. To ourselves. When you're told your solution is too new, you make it old. When you're told it's too complicated, you simplify until a grandmother can do it with one good hand and a patient grandchild. Gabriella tears apart her own prototype. Not out of anger but out of respect. She asks different questions. What exists in Chad that is cheap, durable, and forgiving? What can be repaired with a nail and a prayer? She learns the language of local material. River sand grated by eye and sieve, charcoal born of millet husk and acacia, clay that remembers every hand that shaped it. She consults research on granular filtration and the adsorption kinetics of activated carbon, then trades the lab's surgical neatness for Busouso's messy elegance. She writes a new recipe. Lower layer, washed gravel to calm the water's rage. Middle, screen sand to teach it patience. Upper, charcoal, calcined and ground just enough to trap the things your eyes can't see: bacteria, organic compounds that make water taste like old metal. Head, a lid of clay fired in a kiln patched with wire and hope. She builds it inside discarded plastic containers because plastics, for all their sins, live forever. And sometimes that's the only kind of durability you can afford. Her lab changes shape. Her new partners include a potter named Hadiza, whose fingers make symmetry look easy, and a blacksmith named Issa, who can coax a blade from scrap and a smile from the uncoaxable. They argue about pore size and aesthetics while tea cools between them. If it looks like trash, people will treat it like trash, Hadiza says, molding a lid that fits like a promise. It must look like it deserves respect. Gabriella nods. Science has to live in a home people will keep tidy. She tests and retests. Not just with bottled contaminants but with the real murk. Water from the river where cattle stand hip deep. Well water drawn with a rope that has more knots than mercy. She builds a small database on a stubborn laptop. Temperature, turbidity, pH, coliform counts, flow rates over days instead of minutes. 90% removal under field conditions. Not as flashy as 98 in a lab, but honest, replicable, cheap. The first time she assembles a complete unit in Busouso, people watch the way they watch weather. Children press closer. Elders lean back. When the first clear thread of water issues from the spout, a woman named Hawa cups her hands and sips. She closes her eyes. When she opens them, they are luminous and wet. It tastes like yesterday, she says, before the water went bitter. Miriam bumps Gabriella's shoulder, laughing through her nose. You did not bring rain, she whispers. You brought yesterday. Skepticism trails hope like a shadow. Some men declare the filter a trick. One warns it will steal the water's strength. Gabriella expects this. Magic must be explained again and again, as if it isn't magic at all. She sits on mats and pours glasses and talks about sand grain size and charcoal's pores like cities. She uses words the way she uses mesh, fine enough to catch fear, wide enough to let pride pass through. Who fixes it when it breaks? An elder demands. We do, Issa answers before she can. And the girls will be trained. Water belongs to everyone. That lands. Ownership has a taste. People recognize it even when it's new. 12 units bloom across Busouso, on doorsteps, in courtyards, next to cooking pots. Children learn where not to touch. Teenagers form a bragging chorus of who can assemble one fastest. Grandmothers become brutal quality control supervisors. Gabriella returns to Nairobi with data and smudges of soot at her wrists. She writes less like a supplicant and more like a partner. Her new proposal is lean and local. Materials sourced within 200 kilometers, assembly by a paid cooperative, maintenance training embedded with distribution, certification through the Ministry of Health, third-party water testing by a regional lab. The Global Water Initiative takes longer this time. When the reply lands, Gabriella refuses to open it in email. She prints it like a ritual. We would like to fund a pilot deployment and training program in 3 regions. She laughs, a sound startled out of her. Kweku whoops. The lab techs clap. Later, alone, she calls her mother, who says nothing for a long time, then makes the sound a person makes when the word finally becomes a fact. The factory in N'Djamena isn't a factory at first. It's a warehouse that smells faintly of old rope and cumin. It grows into a place where work instructs itself. Tables lined with sieves and scales, charcoal drums and water baths, a bulletin board with names in chalk, and a crude cartoon of a smiling filter that someone's nephew draws and refuses to stop drawing. Gabriella hires Hadiza to manage the clay head production. Issa runs the tool bench and trains teenage boys whose restless hands are miracles waiting to be named. She recruits women from the neighborhoods and pays them a living wage, then pays them more when they bring in sisters and cousins and teach one another faster than any manual could. This is not charity, she tells a visiting official who asks if they accept donations of time. This is an industry, Hadiza says, handing the official a hairnet. They build a supply chain out of relationships instead of spreadsheets. Sand from a river bend where flow leaves outliers. Acacia charcoal kilned by farmers who learn to control burn for consistency. Packaging from a cooperative that used to sew uniforms and now sews dignity into canvas. Setbacks come like weather. Some announced, some rude. A load of charcoal arrives underfired and sheds powder that clogs the top layer. They halt production rather than send out filters that wheeze. Issa curses under his breath and builds a crude testing jig from bicycle spokes and stubbornness, so they can catch bad batches before they meet water. A truck full of units is halted at a checkpoint and held for a bribe. Gabriella spends 3 hours under a tin awning arguing in heat that cooks her patience. She had prepared for turbidity curves and bacterial loads. She had not prepared for men who move gates for sport. She calls a district nurse who vouches for the shipment. The gate lifts, the lesson sticks. Always have allies. After a distribution to a village 2 days' drive away, a rumor circulates that the filters steal salt from the water and weaken drinkers. A mother tries to return hers. Gabriella loads a car with a cooler of tea, packets of oral rehydration salts, a stack of field posters, and the patience of 10 schoolteachers. She sits in the shade and listens before she corrects. She demonstrates before she insists. She knows trust is an aquifer. You draw from it slowly, you feed it often. Drink, she says gently to the mother, after boiling water on a blackened stove and letting it pass through the layers. See if this tastes like your childhood. The woman sips and smiles despite herself. I was a child once, she says. I had forgotten. The pilot expands. The Ministry of Health certifies the device as food grade. A regional NGO adds a training module to their maternal health visits. Basic hygiene, filter care, when to replace layers. Gabriella argues successfully that replacement charcoal and sand should cost less than bread. People budget for bread. She wants them to budget for this. Her inbox fills with messages that begin as orders and end as stories. My son drank without coughing last night. My mother stopped boiling and has more firewood for cooking. The school had water for all the children today. She prints them and tapes them above her desk like talismans. Then a letter arrives in an envelope so clean it looks like it was ironed. The return address is Bamako. The African Development Bank wants a meeting. In Bamako, a man named Kouiate shakes her hand and says, "We prefer to fund what we can measure." Measure this, Gabriella says, and slides across third-party lab results, the ministry certification, the maintenance logs written in handwriting that smells of charcoal and soap, GPS dots that show a spread that is not exponential but is stubborn. Kouiate clears his throat. And your goal? No family should walk 20 kilometers for water that still makes them sick, she says simply. We can't summon rain. But we can buy time. Clean time. He nods, considering. We can fund expansion in Niger and northern Mali, he says at last. If your training can be replicated. It can, Hadiza says from beside Gabriella, surprising the room. Mothers learn fast when their hands are involved. A year later, Busouso is louder. The schoolyard holds more noise than dust. The clinic has more births than fevers. The women still walk, but less far, and not every day, and not with the same resignation. They walk with choice. Gabriella returns often, sometimes as a guest, sometimes as labor. She still crouches on mats and tightens lids, she still listens. One afternoon, a group of girls intercepts her on the path to the well. They hold notebooks, pencils chewed to bravery. Can we learn the science? The smallest asks, chin lifted. Gabriella squats to their height. Bring your questions, she says, and your hands. They arrive in a flood, voices stepping on voices. How does charcoal catch the bad things? Why does the sand go in the middle? How will we know when to change the layers? Will the water remember us? She teaches adsorption by using a bowl of millet and a handful of stones. She teaches pore size with sieves and laughter. She teaches maintenance by putting a unit in front of them and refusing to touch it while she narrates. They do it. Their faces tilt toward the water as if toward a mirror. On the walk home, Miriam falls into step beside her. You always wanted to be a teacher, she says. I wanted to be useful, Gabriella replies. Turns out they feel the same in the hand. They pass Alexandra's courtyard. The old woman sits with a glass of clear water and a satisfaction that looks like shade. You brought us yesterday, she tells her daughter using Hawa's phrase. And tomorrow. You've wasted nothing. Not your schooling, not your stubbornness. Gabriella laughs. Stubbornness is the only thing they don't tax. Alexandra waves her hand. Go drink before the children finish everything. The factory grows, but not grotesquely. Gabriella refuses to chase numbers that make for proud reports and normal lies. She wants a long life, not a loud one. She wants spare parts in every village, a person who can fix a crack with a little clay and a lot of care, a ledger that is boring because it balances. Issa's boys become men who train other boys. Hadiz's daughter designs a lid mold that halves the breakage rate. Kweku moves back to Ghana and sets up a sister workshop that trades notes like recipes. Rosa, no wrong story, but every story grows cousins. When journalists ask Gabriella about prizes, she shrugs. Awards make my mother smile, she admits. But the work is the work. When donors ask her how many units next year, she says, as many as we can support without lying. Sometimes Drought loosens. Sometimes it clenches. The filters do what they can. They clean what exists while prayers and policy wrestle over what should. On a day when the wind is merciful, Gabriella stands with a group of women by the reedy bank of a river that used to be a certainty. They fill buckets and talk about weddings and prices and a baby who won't sleep. The conversation is ordinary. That is the miracle. A girl tugs Gabriella's sleeve. It is the smallest from the earlier lesson. Her notebook now fat with scribbles. Will you come back? The girl asks. I always do, Gabriella says. Will I be you? The girl asks, half teasing, half daring. You'll be better, Gabriella answers and means it. They lift their buckets. The water inside sloshes and for once smells like nothing at all. On the way home their shadows are long, and the wind carries a hint of something green. Gabriella thinks of all the names she has learned. For bacteria, for filters, for failure, for luck. She thinks of the name she wants to change. Drought, distance, denial. She thinks of what her mother asked years ago, to make the water come to them. She didn't bring a river. She brought something else. A way to stay, to drink, to study, to decide. A time machine that moves a village from a punishing present to a bearable future. One clear cup at a time. She is not chasing a Nobel. She is not chasing applause. She is chasing a feeling, the one that lives at the bottom of a glass when a child drinks and does not cough, when a girl opens a notebook and draws a diagram instead of a cracked riverbed, when a mother lifts a basin and thinks about dinner instead of dysentery. Science, when guided by service, does not glitter. It holds. It filters. It remembers. It gives the world back its last essential drop, and then teaches it how to keep it.